So the ELEAGUE Major is finally over. We have seen almost a month of intense CSGO action come to a close this past on Sunday, and we have crowned a brand new Major champion in Cloud9. Now, we'll get to all of this in a few minutes, because I do want to preface this video by saying we're going to be talking about most of the ELEAGUE Major, and what should be a brief video outlining the storylines to take away from the ELEAGUE Major, what we should be looking at going forward. And I say brief with a massive pinch of salt, because my first take of this video went over 50 minutes. So we will be covering all of the storylines in the ELEAGUE Major. And again, I've already stated what we'll be taking away going forward. And I'm going to kind of list them going from the most significant to, the least significant going up to the most significant by the end of the video. So we'll start, of course, with the group stage run of the Sharks, the fantastic run of Vega Squadron. It was a meme, whether you want to consider it as a legitimate run, whether you want to consider it as legitimate upsets, considering the nature of the ELEAGUE Major being a Swiss system, best of one, etc. That's up to you. For me personally, I think it was more a meme than anything. It was entertaining watching people go on Twitter and watching all the hashtags of the gifs of just like running by of that like finding emo shark gif. It was funny for a while, but at the end of the day, I don't think Vega had a fantastic run, to be honest. And we'll run down exactly what that run consisted of, because everybody considered them or consider them to be the 0-3 pick for the pick'em stage in the group stage, particularly for the challengers. Didn't end up doing that. I thought they were a little bit stronger than most of the other teams. I honestly expected the likes of Flash Gaming and QB Fire to be going down at 0-3. I expected at least Vega to be able to beat them. But starting off their challenger run, they actually managed to beat Renegades to kick things off, 16-14, and the salt levels started to rise all over Twitter if you were following the Major at that stage. It really should have been a Renegades victory, to be honest. I don't think there's any debate or any controversy in stating that. It wasn't it wasn't a very good performance from them at all, considering that they were also one of the teams that came through first place through the Asian minor, and a team that really has at least a decent amount of talent. You would have expected them to be able to bring this one forward and be able to take a victory against the likes of Vega Squadron, but no, they actually shit the bed pretty hard. It was a close map, 16-14 Mirage, but Renegades later went on to get eliminated in this stage of the group, which is a shame, really, because I feel they could have gotten a lot further and could have at least had a slightly deeper run in this particular tournament. But it wasn't to be. They lost that particular one, and Vega went on to face off against FaZe on Inferno. Now, Vega, so you could have made a decent shout for the likes of Renegades to, say, hey, you know what, these guys, there is at least a potential for an upset if you are a Renegades fan. But in the case of FaZe, you really couldn't have made that statement at all, when everybody was on their eyes on them, just like, yeah, these guys have got this one pretty easy. This should be like a 16-5 on this particular map. It's a very good map for FaZe. Nothing particularly stand out from Vega Squadron to be able to bring to the table on Inferno. But no, actually, Vega basically shat all over FaZe, outstyled them pretty hard, outscored them pretty hard, and just shut them down at every single turn. It was very uncharacteristic from FaZe to be able to lose this kind of a scoreline. It's 16-6 to the favor of Vega Squadron. And prior to this matchup, no one, I think, except for Moses, really knew that FaZe had struggled against Vega on this map. I don't think anybody really accounted for that. It was only after the fact that, Moses came out with his, I think it was an interview or on Twitter saying, oh yeah, well, I spoke to Carrigan and that's what he told me. And, lo and behold, he became the god of the prediction stage at this point, and everybody, memed that out for the tournament, which was fun and all, but I don't think they could have repeated that same performance against FaZe, and we'll find out later that they actually didn't. But for the time being, they were 2-0 up in the group stage. No one really expected this. I expected them to get through, at the very least, through to a decent a decently deep run in the challenger stage, but I wasn't expecting them to get all the way through. But they did, not exactly in the 3-0 realm, because they faced up against G2 next on Overpass and actually managed to lose to them. It was a very good match, though. I think a very legitimate victory, or a very legitimate result, sorry, from the Vegas side. From G2's point of things, it really is a testament to how low their bottom floor is, but how high their ceiling can be. It was a 19-16 overtime victory on Overpass. And again, for G2, there were a lot of issues that they had. Force buying was one that was kind of prevalent. And at the very end of the match, I honest to God believe that because they were on match point, Vega, and they force bought into one of the final few rounds of regulation, and I honestly believed that was going to be their downfall. I believe that Vega were going to make probably the biggest upset of the whole tournament right there. That honor goes to another team later on down the line, but yeah, no, it looked like it was going to be one of the biggest upsets at that point in time. It wasn't. G2 was able to put it back in first overtime, and yeah, they went through 3-0. Vega had to drop down and face off against Liquid in the next round. They did win this one, so their record at the end of the Challenger stage was 3-1. 16-14 was the result on Mirage. It's a caveat result. Liquid, I feel like every day should be able to win this kind of a match, and they did get close. It was within 2 points, and only one round really was separated. It went to all 30 in regulation. No overtime, 16-14. But Liquid were playing with a sub anyway. They were playing with their coach Zeus, which is, you know, something you have to consider when you take a look at Liquid's overall run in this particular tournament. You've got to consider that, you know, that they aren't really at their top form. I feel like they could have become legends, but they didn't. They wouldn't have even made it out of the Challenger stage had it even been for 100 Thieves. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Either way, Vega won it. They went on to the Legends stage. And they started off actually decently solid. When you take a look at their first match against North, you would have initially expected North to be relatively solid, but they lost 16-10. And as the rest of the next 3 days would unfold, it actually turned out that North were probably one of the bigger underperformers in this whole tournament. 3-0 down in the Legends stage and out of the Legends stage within round 3. Not a good performance at all from them. I can't really say much more than that. They really just shit the bed and had a really poor run of things. Then I went on to face FaZe on Train. This one was much more characteristic, much more within the realm of what FaZe can do. 16-3, very good performance, very standardized match that you would expect it to go. And then I went on to face off against Mouse Sports, which is also just as though it went about as well as you would expect it to be. 16-3 on Mirage. And Vega went out in the elimination zone for the Swiss system. One more loss, and that would have put them out. They had to win 2 more matches. And they did win one. It was against Liquid. And again, you can say what you want about Liquid, but really, I don't believe that they had much of a chance to really get this far and really be able to get much further than the Legends stage. They were using a stand-in, they were using Zeus, as I've already mentioned. And actually, as a further note, actually Liquid wouldn't even have been in this situation if 100 Thieves hadn't dropped out. Because if they were in this tournament, then, you know, Liquid would never have had the second chance, the final chance in that 2-3 mini bracket that they put up between them, Renegades, and I think it was Misfits as the last team. But they wouldn't have made it past that little bit. They wouldn't have made it up to this point in the tournament. So it's expected that I think Vega would have been able to beat them on Inferno. And then the final match was against Cloud9, who are by far and away the better team, the eventual tournament winners, as you know. On Mirage, it was 16-4, and this was the point where Vega kind of went down. And, you know, it was fun while it lasted. You know, the shark gif was fantastic, but the run overall was, in retrospective, kind of underwhelming. They took one reputable name, and that was FaZe. Then the whole hype carried all the way to the end of the Legends stage. And everybody else they played was just not really great. They were either in terrible form or playing with a stand-in, or they were just not that great at all. Like the Renegades, for example, you know. They're not a great team, as has proved in this particular stage. I would have hoped that they would have been able to hold a bit more of a fight, but it just wasn't happening at all from that side of things. I think they've got a lot to prove now. They are Legends. Not Legends, they are Challengers still. And they've got a lot to show from now till the next major, wherever that might be. Rumours are circulating, but I won't entertain that in this particular video. If it does get confirmed, I will 100% entertain it because it's quite exciting for me personally. But yeah, no, it was a fun run, but I expect them probably not to pull the same thing out of the hat during the next major. Another team that I don't expect to do at the next do well at the next major either is also Quantum Bellator Fire, which I think had a bit of a miracle run. Another team that was pinned to be like a 0-3 team that were expected to go out during the Challenger stage, but they didn't. They made it all the way to the playoffs, which is impressive in its own accord. But when you consider exactly the nature of the Swiss system and exactly, you know, what we're talking about in terms of QB Fire's run, it wasn't great at all. It was a Challenger run that was relatively easy. They beat Flash Gaming in the first round. They're terrible. They went out 0-3 in Challenger. I don't think anyone of any reasonable mind expected Flash to be doing well at all. Then they beat Envy, which on paper sounds like a very sick achievement. But when you consider that this team is absolute shit and they did not do well at all, you expect it to be, you know, you don't really expect it to be that fantastic at all. They went down 1-3 in the Challenger stage, drawn second last with Sprout and Misfits, both for teams who are not fantastic. That actually means that the final tie was not with Misfits. It was between Liquid and someone else. But Yeah, no, and Envy, not a fantastic team at all, and I wouldn't really, and I'm actually not 100% surprised that QB Fire would have had this kind of victory. They looked poor going into this matchup, and they looked poor at the end of it. They would have gone down 0-3 if they hadn't drawn Flash in that 0-3 game. Yeah, Envy not looking fucking fantastic at all, but we'll get into that a little bit later. We'll expand on that in more detail when we come to one of our points later on in the video. But for now, just keeping on with QB Fire. Avangard was their final matchup, and it actually was a surprising matchup. I honestly thought Avangard would be able to win this relatively easily. But the problem was really lying in the map vetoes for these guys. Train was not a great map for them. It's not a solid map for them across all their results, both online and on LAN. But when you take a look at it and you just isolate the LAN results, they have a 33.3% win rate. 1 time out of 3 times on LAN they've been able to win it. And even then, it wasn't even a very solid team that they won against. So why they let it through against QB Fire, a team who, you know, I guess you could say, oh, no, definitely didn't deserve to be in this particular instance. But either way, they still drew against them, and they still were able to have, like, you know, a pretty decent run overall through the tournament. I don't think that Train should have been a result that should have been a map that they let through, and as a result, that's what gave QB Fire 3-0 in the Challenger stage. So Avangard dropped the fucking ball on that side of things. I don't think that QB Fire should have made it this far. I think that Avangard should have had that spot. I think they would have had a better run than QB Fire. I think they would have had at least a decent fight in the Legend stage. That's not to say that QB Fire didn't have a good run at the Legend stage, but again, it's a situation where you look at the teams that they faced against, and you don't really you kind of expect them to be able to do at least hold a decent candle to these teams, because, you know, they drew the first round against Virtus Pro, and honestly, Virtus Pro are a fucking shamble at this point. They've constantly underperformed. They've constantly been at the helm and you know, at risk of losing everything, both online and on LAN, only surviving by basically invites. You know, they're going to Katowice just because it's in Poland. You know, that's the only reason why. I don't think they've got an invite to Star Ladder, but I haven't checked that, so I can't verify. I don't think they've got an invite to most of the other major lands. I don't think they're getting to the DreamHack event in France. I can't say the name of the place, so we'll just call it the DreamHack Masters in France. And yeah, I just have a doubt that Virtus Pro have much left in it. So to see QB Fire win against them, it doesn't surprise me at all. It does surprise a lot of people, but not me, not in the slightest. They then went on to face Gambit, which I think is actually a pretty solid result. Inferno 19-16, so it did push the limits of what Gambit can do. But at the same time, I don't think that Gambit came into this tournament as major favourites. I don't think they came in as in my opinion at least, a team that would make it all the way through to the Legends, to be a legendary team at the end of it. So, but didn't expect them to get through to a playoff run. I definitely expected them to beat QB Fire, so this is an upset in my book. And I think that QB Fire do have that much to their credit when it comes to their run throughout the Legend stage. They did draw against G2 in the third round matchup in the 2-0 stage. Hot form from G2 in this stage, and they actually did go up 3-0 overall. They had some pretty decent victories all in their favour. And up against Quantum Bellator Fire, I don't expect Quantum Bellator Fire to do so. I think that G2 hit the ceiling in this stage, and they absolutely swamped them as a result. So yeah, not an expected victory for QB Fire, not a significant loss for them. They were going to lose to G2. They are the better team. What is a very significant victory, though, is beating Mouse Sports. Now, Mouse Sports are a team that I've been repping for quite a bit of time. Their ECS Grand Final run was, you know, incredible. They can go toe-to-toe with the big teams. They've proven that much. But they didn't go toe-to-toe with QB Fire in this final match of the, or in this final top-tier match of the 2-1 group. Mouse Sports got Train. It was 16-14. It was hyper close. I don't think anyone really expected this kind of performance out of QB Fire, but they did manage to take it over, and that's really what gave them their shot at the playoffs. Not expected. I don't think it was deserved because of the way that they kind of got through this one, the fact that they beat Virtus Pro. I think 2 upsets is sort of a mark to their favour, so I guess you could say. But there were many other teams that they could have drawn against that they would have very easily lost towards, and overall in the group stage, 2 significant victories out of 6 isn't really fantastic of a form if you are QB Fire. So going into the playoffs, I don't really think they had much of a chance against Na'Vi, and at the end of the day, a dream run does need to end, and they didn't really stand much of a chance against Na'Vi. 2-0 in that one. They've got so much better, they've got so much better talent, a much better and deep map pool than QB Fire. QB Fire have never beaten Na'Vi before. I don't even think they faced them during this entire LAN, I don't think. So to see them here doesn't really surprise me at all, and as a result, that's it. You know, QB Fire just you know, fell apart. Their Legends run was legit. Their Challenger run was not. I don't think they really had deserved the chance. But time will tell really at the next major whether they can really perform. Going forward, I really want to see them at more Tier 2 lands. I hopefully want to see them get invited to the likes of DreamHack Opens. Not Masters, definitely not. But see them at DreamHack Open events and see them perform in that regard. I really want to see if they can perform at that kind of a level. If they can, then they may earn their opportunity to play at the next major. I think they'll earn their shot, at least my respect, to give them a chance at the Legend stage at the next major. But for now, I'm not 100% convinced about QB Fire, and only time will tell whether they can really do anything in the CIS scene. But talking of teams that really have a lot to prove and have a lot to change, we're going to go to the French Shuffle now. This is something that's been rumoured out, especially with the reports coming in from, I think it was Flickshot. I remember it being reported by HLTV, but I think the report came in from Flickshot about Kiyoshima being eyed up by Envious. They've already benched XMS, that's been confirmed, and honestly XMS is not really a great man in that roster. Neither is Sixer, and I really hope that Sixer also gets swapped for someone like Zai Wu. Those two, I think if Kyo and Zai Wu enter this roster, then we do have a decent shout to potentially bring something back to the Team Envious side. And it's kind of appropriate as well, especially with Kiyoshima, because he actually has already stood in for Envious. And when he did stand in for Envious, they had probably one of the best LAN events of their time as that 5-man core, or at least 4-man core if you want to count losing the likes of Scream. But yeah, no, they crashed out of basically every single LAN. Up to that point, they had poor online performance. They had a very, very dire time over the course of Pro League, ECS, whatever they were competing in. And Kyo came in for them at the WESG LAN, because WESG, of course, has a rule where all 5 players of your team, and I think the coach also, technically all 6 players of your team need to be of the same nationality. And of course, Scream is Belgian. Yeah, I think he's from Belgium, and Kyo's obviously from France, so he had to stand in for WESG. They topped their group, and as a result, they got to the quarterfinals by default, had to face against Space Soldiers. Did lose 2-0 to them, but, you know, a top 8 result is still better than any other result that, you know, Envy have had over the past couple of, past few months, so... For me, it's a little bit of common ground that Envy can work with in terms of having Kiyoshima on there, and I think that it will be a great pickup overall, because Kyo is a soldier. He's probably one of the best players in all of France right now. Obviously, he's been inactive, so he'll have to, you know, brush off the dust and, you know, clean up the rust and really just figure himself out. But overall, when it comes to his own, you know, personal merits, he's a soldier. He'll do whatever you need him to do, and I think he makes a perfect fit for any team. And seeing him just on the bench of FaZe is a tragedy. I feel like he would have a great place in Envious. I know Envious have the money to buy him out of that contract. I know Envious have the money to keep his salary up. So Kyo for me makes the most amount of sense, in my opinion, when it comes to this roster. Add Zai Wu in. They've got to wait for him to... I know that he's got issues with his parents and they don't want to let him play professionally until he gets out of school. But I think if they could convince him that or convince his family that he can play professionally, and if he can make his way up to a professional level like that, I think that this Envy roster could have a decent shout to be a decent team in France. As for G2, because people have been throwing that around, will G2 make a roster swap? I personally don't really want to see that. I don't really think that G2 will make the roster swap, because I think the only thing they need to work on is consistency. They're a team that have the highest ceiling but the lowest ground floor, and you can either see them absolutely dominate the tournament or absolutely shit the bed. In this case, they had one phase of the tournament where they had a fantastic run, and then when they hit the playoffs, it didn't really go so well. And I think that just making a roster change would do any one of these two things, and even potentially even both of these two things. That's number one, bring a little bit more consistency, which is what I think they need to find. I think that can be achieved on their own anyway, so I don't really support the idea of having a roster change. But the second thing, and this is kind of the thing that will really bring them down, is that it could potentially break the whole dynamic and bring that skill ceiling that brought them the titles of Malmo, etc., down by a significant amount. G2, if they kept that skill ceiling up, if they kept themselves at that kind of a form that they had in the Legends run, then I feel like they would have, they probably could have had a decent shot to win this tournament. I think they could have gotten to the grand finals if they didn't lose to Cloud9, and I think they would have had a decent game against SK, if not a decent game against FaZe, and I think they would have had, you know, a very good run into the finals. So I don't really want to see them involved. If they are involved, then that's of course down to the team dynamic and whether they want to make that choice, but I don't think it's a good idea at all to see G2 involve themselves in the French Shuffle. Speaking of shuffles and speaking of teams that do have a lot of potential to their name, Fnatic have resurged in this tournament. And I've been really excited to see Fnatic go this far. We saw at the end of 2017, well, actually, we'll start with their results overall ever since 2016, because 2016 was really the year where the old Fnatic roster dropped off. This was obviously the Olaf and Dennis era. They had Crims, JW, and Flusher also there as well. They swapped about with Godsent a little bit, but overall, that roster hadn't won a title since their first place finish at Katowice 2016. That's almost 2 years ago now. So Fnatic needed to make some changes, and they did. They kicked Olaf out. They kicked Dennis out. Dennis went to Godsent. Olaf went to FaZe, obviously, and he's had a lot of success. Dennis hasn't necessarily done so. But they brought Golden up from the academy team. I think they brought in Lekro as well. And I'm not sure if he came from the academy team or if he was transferred from Godsent. My memory isn't 100% legit on that. I know that the Swedish shuffle has been a mess, but either way, we've got the roster that we've got now. Golden had a bit of a teething period with his roster, but since then he's really invigorated the team, brought a new style of CS. He himself is not a great performer, but his calls have been fantastic, and his leadership has led them to 3 top 4 finishes in a row. WESG EU, EPL finals in Odense, and the ECS finals in Cancun. 3 top 4 finishes in a row, back-to-back major Premier tier lands. That's pretty legit if you ask me. And going into this major, they were actually my dark horse pick. I think that they could have had a good shout. I really think they could have gotten to the semi-finals at least. I don't think they would have gone all the way to the finals, but if they drew against Mouse Sports or Quantum Bellator Fire, then I think that they would have easily gotten to the semis. I think that the Mouse Sports would have been a challenge, but they would have been able to beat them. And I think that QB Fire was shitter, so whoever they drew anyway, they were going to lose. So if Fnatic got that, then I think that they would have had a good run. I think they would have gotten to the semis and probably fallen out to one of the other teams that were there. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what they have in the future, because the great thing about this major is that they've proven now that they are a good team, that they are a world-class team, and the future is really looking bright for them. We've got a bunch of LAN events coming up. We've got Starladder ELEAGUE Season 4, which they've been invited to, the IEM Katowice event. They haven't been invited to that directly, but they are in the closed qualifying. I think they should have no problems getting through that. They've obviously qualified for WESG World Finals by getting through the EU LAN Top 4. DreamHack Masters France, no info revealed on that just yet, but I think Fnatic probably would be invited to that event. I feel like they would have a decent shout. If not, I think they should be able to qualify no problem, as well as that all the online leagues that they're part of is a plus for them. They've had a very good online tournament, got a very good online showing, and I think they would have a very good online showing even going into this next one. I think all that's going to do is going to add some LAN performance to it as well, and then maybe they could first place in the league and then go to the likes of EPL finals and still make a ripple, a tidal wave across the entire CS scene. I think this is one team to watch out for, and over the coming few months with all the events coming up, I really want to see what they can do. Now, we're going to go broad strokes for a little bit, because now I want to turn to the fall of the old legends. Because over the Legends stage, over the Legends Swiss system, we lost 5 legends to the Challenger pit, essentially. Virtus Pro, North, Big, Astralis, and Gambit. Those are the 5, and we'll start with Virtus Pro, because I have quite a bit to say about this team. They have... this has been coming a long time for them. The age is catching up to them. The changes are catching up to them. They are really not the same team, which is sad because they're legends. You know, you can't deny the stability of this roster to stay together for like 3+ fucking years, and you can't deny the achievements that they've all made as individuals and as a squad, as a core 3-man unit, and as a core 5-man unit as well. They've been at the top, they've been at the bottom, they've been everywhere in between, and they've really kind of held on to their own. But if this ain't the last breath for the team, then all they are is really just clinging on to last hope, or they're just clinging on to the money, to be honest. And that sucks, because really, I think that, you know, all that Virtus Pro have left is their spending power. You know, they're an extremely popular team. They've popularized esports in Poland, and whenever they do go to a Polish event, they are the fan favorites by a fucking country mile. You go to any event, if you put them on the tournament, if you put them on for the qualifiers, then you're going to get 20,000 views by default, even if it's just a shit online league or a shit online closed qualifier. You're going to win that every single time, and, you know, VP fans will always turn out to watch their team, no matter how shit they really are. And let's be real here, they are shit. That's all they've got left. They've got their spending power. They've got no good runs left in them. I don't think they've got a whole lot of talent left compared to the whole CSGO landscape. I think that they might resurge for another tournament, maybe. Like, you know, the Epicenter situation where they just came out of fucking nowhere after a shit level of form coming into this event, and they made top 2. But I think that if they do that, they might last for an event or 2 events, and then they'll fall off the edge of the cliff once again, because I just don't see it happening right now. There's got to be a change from Virtus Pro. And I don't see it coming. I just have to ask the folks at ES Force, when are you going to end this madness? When are you going to make this team better? There have been rumors flying around that Taz and Neo might get cut. Or Neo would be fucking mad, but, you know, Taz might get cut from the team. And there might be some changes in that regard. But honestly, given the attitude that Virtus Pro as a team and as an organization have had to this particular squad, I just don't see it happening. I really fucking don't. And I think that just might be the end of Virtus Pro. What's going to happen next, I don't know. Personally, I don't really care. I don't really see this team being a Premier level team anymore. I don't see them having a consistent top one basis. I did look at the rankings and they are top 10, but that's basically just them being boosted by their old sort of their old achievements way back at the beginning of 2017 because of HLTV's 12-month system. For me, the past 3 months wouldn't rank them in the top 10 at all. Wouldn't rank them very highly at all, any regard. I just don't think this team has had a whole lot left in them. Now, North, I think, despite VP's disappointing run, I think North was probably the more disappointing team overall, because while VP, I don't think have a whole lot left, I still see a lot of talent in North. And already you can see after this major, they've had a bit of a fallout, they've had to make some roster changes, but ever since they kicked Magisk, obviously, you know, probably not for performance issues, but thanks to personal issues going on in that particular team, they only made 3 top 4 runs throughout the entire of that period of time between Magisk getting benched and the E-League Major, and that was DreamHack Masters Malmo where they came top 4, E-League Premier where they came top 4, and Blast Pro Series where they came 3rd. And going into the major, that's not a very good manner of form, because that's like 6 months in difference between those between these two events, and only winning 3 top 4 runs over the course of that period doesn't look very good at all. So going into the major, they really were on poor form. I would have hoped and I would have expected them to make a decent run through the Legend stage, at least getting to the very end of it, like round 5, and maybe going out, if not making it to the top 8 again. But they bombed out hard 0-3. They lost against Vega Squadron, who are shit. They lost to Astralis, who definitely aren't 100%, and they lost to Big, who would go out in the next round anyway. So North have not had a very good time at all. Not a very good tournament run at all. Very, very disappointing. And I think if you have to give, like, you know, a big trophy, like a tiny little, like, you know, plastic trophy for the most disappointing team in the whole tournament, it would go to North. It's unfortunate as well, because I think that North have a lot of talent. I think that I can dip into the Danish scene. We've already seen them replace Cajun B with Mertz, which I think is going to be a fantastic pickup for them. But obviously, Mertz has to prove himself in that top tier level. So we'll see if it goes well for them. We'll see if it actually ends up to being North's favour. But for now, their tournament run at E-League Major was shit. They'll go back to the Challenger stage for the next major. And only time will tell how well they'll perform at the other tournaments that are coming up. Now, for Big... Again, it's a similar situation where after the PGL Major, they didn't really do well at all. Like, you know, they were before the PGL Major, they had a great run. They got second at ESCA's Mountain Dew League finals, both the League and the Global Challenge finals. They got top 4 at Copenhagen Games. They got a couple of good performances on online tournaments. I remember the Farmskins Championship was really fun to watch them watch. I casted that event as well. But you know, seeing them kind of run through leading up to the PGL Major, I thought they had a decent shot to make it to the top 8, and they did. But after the PGL Major, they were shit. They got only 2 major top 2 finishes at that major events. They got no top 4 finishes, but the 2 top 2 finishes they got were DreamHack Open Denver and ESWC. Now, weighing that up against someone like North, you can take a look at they got top 4 at 3 premier events, which I think is much better than DreamHack Open Denver and in the ESWC when you compare the caliber of those kind of events. And as well as that, Big only got a couple less, so they didn't do well at all. They went out in a higher placement than someone like North, so I guess they did beat expectations in that regard. But compared to how they run at the last PGL Major, it's not looking good at all. They've got a lot of work to do. They've got a little bit of an opportunity coming up, because obviously they've qualified for the WESG the WESG World Finals, but that's about it, I think. I don't see them getting invites to major tournaments. They might be in some qualifiers here and there, but only time will tell, really, whether they can pick things back up and really step up over the course of the next few months. Hope to see them at a couple of DreamHack Opens. Maybe they might perform in that regard, but for this major, underwhelming performance, and as a result, they lose their Legend spot. Astralis, I was expecting to lose their Legend spot, I'm not going to lie. I held some hope that the team, the 4 members of the team that weren't sick would still be able to bring things back, but Device returned. They put him on the rifle, they put Dupree on the AWP, and Dupree really wasn't stepping up to the plate. And that's a shame as well, because Astralis, even without Device, had a really fantastic miracle run of tournaments at the end of 2017. Second at Blast Pro Series, top 4 at ECS Finals. They only barely got grouped to IEM, which, considering how Device was playing and how Device's condition was only kicking off at that particular point, I think that's pretty incredible for this team. But it's very clear to me that during this stage, Device was not performing at 100%, and Dupree wasn't bringing the AWP to the level that Device really could. So as a result, both players were at the bottom of the scoreboard. Device, definitely at the bottom of the scoreboard every single time. He bottomed out the entire server. Dupree had some like sparks of life, but overall, Astralis need to work on some things before the next major tournament to get back on form, especially Device. You know, Device has this issue of going out for a few months, going out and trying to, you know, recover himself, and it does kind of speak volumes of the likes of Guardian and Earthmeister, who around about the MLG and ESL Pro League Season 3 time, around that summer of 2016 sort of like period, it definitely felt like that those two players, well, those two players in particular, had their own individual injuries, but they had an issue where they could never get back on form in their own respective squads. And then the whole story ended with Olaf going to FaZe and Guardian also coming to FaZe, and both sides, as a result, tanking for it. And I feel that's what's going to happen with Device. Whether he'll get swapped out is still yet to be seen. Obviously, it's early days, and Astralis have confirmed that they're not going to be making any roster swaps, despite the Danish shuffle being a much talked about thing in the whole scene. I don't think that they will do so. I think that the Device's performance over the next couple of events will really decide whether he's going to get cut from the team or not. I think he has to step up. I think he has another good place and another good team, but his illnesses have caused him a lot of issues in this major, and they may still cause his performance problems later on during the next couple of events, but we'll see whether that will remain to be the case at the end of maybe March or April. And now we go on to the final legend, Gambit. Yeah, Gambit not good at all. Ever since they lost Zeus, it definitely felt like it was a downturn. They got top 4 at DreamHack Masters Malmo, which is fair enough, but their honeymoon period with Fitch by the end of the year was most definitely like gone, you know, by far and away gone. They got top 4 DreamHack Masters Malmo, which is a premier tournament. They got DreamHack Winter top 4, which I think is a much lower tier than like Masters Malmo. So I can't really speak volumes for their own individual performance, and they have taken another title since the PGL Major in the ROG Masters. But even then, their opponents were Tai Lu, so you can't really take much away from that victory as a whole. And, you know, as a result, Gambit really I didn't expect them to go through in this major, and they didn't. The honeymoon period with Fitch was over, and as a result, they didn't make it out of Legends. Decent run, but nothing fantastic, and they really didn't go through the whole thing. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it now, a lot of the common threads you can see about these 5 major upsets is that a lot of the teams were either just not doing well or not on form, or there was a player that wasn't on form, or there was some sort of like massive underperformance going into this major and between this major and the last. The only situation I can see where that wouldn't have been the case with Astralis, and if Device hadn't gotten ill, if he hadn't gotten to that performance destroying sickness that cursed him at the end of 2017, I would have thought that they would have still been in the legend spot. I would have thought that they would have maybe taken a QB5 spot over him, maybe gone through a decent run through Na'Vi, and probably lost to FaZe later on. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a shame that that's the situation that come through, but obviously they weren't on form with Device. I think if Device didn't get sick, then they would have had a much better run, but that's not to be today. I think Astralis is the only standout team in that case, because I still think they're a top 5 team, but everybody else in that particular roster list definitely did not perform after PGL. They definitely didn't perform in this major, and as a result, their time in the top tier echelons of the scene is going to get a little bit more difficult from here on out. But now let's talk about another legend. One that is going to be definitively a legend next time because they won the fucking tournament. It's Cloud9. No one expected them to be standing at the end of the major. No one expected them to be in the finals. I think a lot of us expected maybe to be a quarter-finalist or a semi-finalist at best. I definitely pinned them to be a quarter-finalist. Sorry, a semi-finalist, excuse me, because I thought that a draw against G2 was fantastic. But, you know, going into this one, their run through the Challengers and Legends stage wasn't fantastic. It wasn't amazing. It was okay, but it wasn't incredible. But what makes this victory even sweeter for Cloud9 and for Cloud9 fans is the fact that they all came from the Challengers stage. It was they were one of 6 teams that played all 3 stages of the major. That was Dem, G2, FaZe, Mousesports, Na'Vi, and Quantum Bellator Fire. Those 6 had a ridiculous run. I think the fact that they got through to the playoffs was pretty damn good. But Cloud9 in particular makes it even sweeter that they literally came from the bottom and now they are here. Their run was easy enough at first through the Challenger stage. They beat Envious, who are shit. They beat Sprout, who are shit. They beat Mouse Sports, but they stomped them out on 16-5 to Trent. So that's pretty legit in its own accord. But, you know, getting up to that point was, you know, not a very good, not a very definitive showing of results from the likes of the rest of the Challenger team. So, you know, I was expecting them to go through relatively easily. Wasn't expecting a 0-3, but they still went 0-3. And as a result, they got through to the Legend stage. The Legend stage is when things really started to get a little bit more awkward for Cloud9 and when things really started to get a little bit less chalant for them. They went up against G2 and they lost against them 16-8. And again, the G2 sort of skill ceiling really topped out at that point. They went 0-3 later on. And as well as that, the map was cash. You could call it a G2 map in this particular isolated case because, you know, comparing it to Cloud9's results, it wasn't really a very good map for them at all, at least when you compare the two together. Cloud9 has still got a capable cache, but I think that G2 definitely had the better map veto in this case. And they went on to round 2 where they faced up against Space Soldiers and they lost a very, very close 16-13 on Cobblestone. Again, I think that the veto could have gone better for Cloud9 because Cobblestone is a surprisingly good map for Space Soldiers. They have a very good track record of it on LAN. Not so much online, but on LAN, they've beaten some very reputable teams with it. So to see them lose to Cloud9, I think that Cloud9 definitely beat them in the edge of talent, but when it came to them overall map vetoes, I think that they probably could have had a better option available to them. So 16-13 was the result, and now Cloud9 were solidly in the elimination phase. Fortunately, the last 3 results were pretty fantastic for them. They beat VP, they drew VP on Mirage 16-7, and we've already discussed how shit VP are. That was the elimination match where they went out 0-3. And the start of the reverse sweep continued into Astralis, trained 16-6. Again, we've already talked about how Astralis are not on form for this major. They weren't on form for this major. And, you know, Cloud9, a pretty expected result to beat Astralis. Indeed, they did. Then they drew the last match in the last phase of the tournament, or of that particular group stage against Vega Squadron, 16-4 on Mirage. Vega had a hot streak coming into this one, but yeah, the Miracle one was never going to last past this. And Cloud9 they drew against. Cloud9 beat them pretty easily. And thus, that is the end of the Legend stage, and Cloud9 just barely scraping their way through it. I think that they got quite lucky. I definitely feel like that's the main issue with the Swiss stage, because a lot of these situations, a lot of these Legends that you that got through to the playoffs, you can easily explain away their results with they got lucky. They got a team that they could beat. They got a map veto that they could beat. They got a couple of upsets here and there, but outside of that, not a whole lot of these results are really, really solid. In fact, they're only yeah, actually, I think there's 1 result out of 6 that was really... Oh, sorry, 1 result out of 8, I should say. That was really solid for Cloud9, and that was, of course, the Mouse Sports stomp, 16-5 on Train, and that's it. Everything else was pretty easy for them. Legends stage was the only 2 defeats they got with G2 and Space Soldiers, but Astralis, Vega, VP, not very good teams at all. Envy and Sprout out in the first stage anyway, so they weren't going to have a good run. Cloud9 had a very easy road to the playoffs, but the playoff run was pretty fucking undeniable. They had... I think it was Thorin, the one who described it best, in the sense that they had faced up against the number 3, number 2, and number 1 seeded, favorited team in that order, ascending through the group stages. They faced them against G2, who I would say, yeah, pretty solidly the number 3 best team to take the whole title. And I've pitted Cloud9 to win this, but only by a little bit. I was expecting it to be a close matchup, and if you go back to my ELEAGUE Major preview video where I talked about the quarterfinal matches as them in isolated cases, I believe that Cloud9 had a slightly superior map pool just to dominate them a little bit. I thought it was going to be a close series of 2-1, but in the end, it seemed like, you know, at the very least, something tricked in Cloud9 that really made them dominate G2, whether it be the crowd, their home field advantage, or whether they were just, you know, whether G2 were hitting that bottom floor of their performance where they just couldn't really compete against Cloud9. It definitely didn't feel like it was a solid GT performance, and it says that in the results. 2-0 obviously in the series, 16-8 on Mirage, 16-7 on Overpass, and Cloud9 walked through to face SK. And this is where I think the road really could have ended for them. I think that there was too much talent on the SK side. I said in my ELEAGUE Major video as well that I said that I feel like there's going to be the only way that Fnatic or Cloud9 or G2 will be able to win their series is against SK, was if SK really didn't give a shit. And I don't think it was necessarily a case that they didn't give a shit, but they definitely underperformed on several different situations. And I think that their map veto also went pretty fucking horribly as well. Cloud9 won Mirage 16-3, which is expected because it's a very weak SK map, but a really strong C9 map. Cobblestone was 16-8. They lost that. Again, also expected because it's a strong SK map and a weak map for Cloud9. And then they got Inferno through as the final map, which I really think that should have been banned by SK because, like, you know, this is the worst map for SK with the exception of Nuke, which is basically their permaban. And, you know, it wasn't really a great veto for the SK side at all. I definitely didn't feel like it was going to be a veto that went this way. But when they got that map veto, I honestly believed that there was a chance for Cloud9 to get to the finals. And lo and behold, they did. They beat SK 2-1. And I just feel like SK dropped the ball on that first stage at all. If they got a much better map pool for them, if they got a much better veto, then it would have gotten much better for them. I think they would have had no problems getting to the final. But as a result, they did. And as a result, they went out here in the semis. Now, the final match was FaZe. And FaZe, we talked about being the #1 favourite to go to this one. Obviously 3-2, and now they faced up against the #1 team in the world, in my personal opinion. And it was an appropriate showdown because it really proved to be the best of NA versus the best of EU. FaZe Clan, I think, have definitively dominated the EU scene. It was between them and SK for the longest time, but now Cloud9 and the North American Dream Team definitely beating out Liquid in that regard, and they are now, I think, probably the best team in the whole of the North American scene. Excuse me. But I felt like this was going to be the end of the line. I have a bad habit of doing this. Every single hurdle is the last hurdle for the underdogs, but I genuinely couldn't see a world where Cloud9 would have beaten FaZe. Everything was going to the favour of FaZe. Their map pool was great. Their talent is much better. And, you know, even the veto went extremely well for them. They got Mirage and Overpass in first. And everyone was thinking that if Cloud9 lost Mirage, then the Overpass, they would definitely not be able to win. And as a result, they would be able to they would be able to dominate FaZe. FaZe were able to dominate Cloud9 relatively easily, and lo and behold, they did lose Mirage. 16-14 was the case, and everyone was really disappointed. I was like, well, that's the end of this final. Better switch off and go watch something else. I stuck with it anyway, and I'm glad I did. But after that point, there was definitely a sinking feeling, and a lot of us saying, yeah, this is the end. Cloud9 can't make it past this one. This is the end of their run, and this is going to be where FaZe take their title. Overpass came through. The LAN results for Cloud9 are not very good, but then FaZe Clan went to sleep. There was a massive underperformance from the FaZe side, particularly Nico, who needed to wake up pretty hard and only woke up at the end of the map, you know, the last few rounds in the second half. But by that point, Cloud9 already had map point, and they were on the verge of taking the victory. So by that point, it was way too late for FaZe to kind of step up. And from there, Cloud9 actually took an upset, 16-10. And that led us to Inferno. Now, I tweeted out that I felt like there was a decent shout for Cloud9 to be able to take this third map and take this tournament overall, but I wasn't expecting it to be this damn good. I was expecting maybe they could have a close match, maybe a 16-14, 16-13, 16-12, but I definitely believe that FaZe was still in the running to win this one. But this map may have been one of the best series in all of CSGO history, and this map may have been one of the best maps in all of CSGO history. It was hype, it was stunning. And Inferno is one of the maps that both sides take in their stride. It's one of their best maps on LAN, online. Cloud9 had to get started pretty solidly, and they did. It was a close half. Moving into the CT side, it seemed like a great B defensive from the part of Cloud9. FaZe kept running through Banana and running up the steps. They mistimed quite a lot as well. There was that one point, I think, yeah, at the very end of the half where overtime was taken by Stewie going nuts with the AWP because there was 7 seconds left, and FaZe tried to fake things out of Cloud9. But no one bit the dirt, and they couldn't get the bomb planted in time. And just because Stewie had a massive 3K, they lost that whole round. As a result, they lost the overtime. Oh, well, they lost the second overtime. They took it to second overtime as well. Because there were some serious individual players from either side. Guardian clutched it, which, of course, led me to tweet 2 massive Guardian tweets in massive capital letters. But, yeah, no, ridiculous players from both sides. Skadoodle went ham, Stewie went ham, Guardian went ham. But in the end, the result was a 22-19 scoreline to Inferno, a 2-1 series overall for Cloud9. It was a ridiculous match, a ridiculous final. I think one of the best matches in the ages of CSGO. One that I think will become the new reference point for newer viewers to CSGO. Those who don't think CSGO and watching CSGO esports is going to be entertaining, I would send them to that fucking map every day of the week. Just like, watch this series preferably, but if you only got an hour or so, watch this map. It is incredible because it was just, you know, absolute hype. And of course it makes history because we have the first North American major champions in CSGO. And it has been a major for firsts overall, which leads me on to my final point about the significance of this major, because it is a very significant major, both in the CSGO landscape and in the landscape of esports as a whole. We'll start with CSGO because obviously we found our first North American major champions. Cloud9 has set the bar for the American runs in major tournaments. We also seen a brand new system introduced for this major. The brand new the brand new system to bring in the lower echelons of the scene up to the major standings. 24 teams down, not just 16. So they get a decent amount of prize money. $35,000 actually went to QB Fire alone. So they can take that through, and they get even more in sticker sales and graffiti sales. Vegas Squadron also had probably had a decent increase, managing to get so far and beating FaZe. You know, seeing these two teams kind of like step their way through, they got massive social media boosts. They got probably massive profits running their way. I think that they have a lot of money to play with now, and I think that's what one of the main benefits of this new major system will be. The fact that it boosts up these teams to the point where they can develop new talent, they can run with it to the end, and they can potentially bring some serious competition to the next majors and even into the general CSGO space, you know, the freelance CSGO space as a whole. So I'm excited to see how those guys do things and how the way that that money will get spent and the way it will go ahead to develop these organizations. The next thing as well is, of course, the record for the highest viewer count on a single channel on Twitch was broken again by ELEAGUE. Last year in the ELEAGUE Major Atlanta, we set it at 1,027,000 viewers. This year we hit well in excess of 1,200,000. Which is so fucking significant because it really proves the relevance of CSGO. That people say CSGO a dead game. Fuck off, mate. You ain't seen shit. You haven't seen fuck all. And yeah, no, it makes me really proud to be a CSGO fan at this point in time. It really makes me proud to be a guy that's really invested in this scene. I've been invested since like 2015. Obviously, I played Counter-Strike since 2009. Been invested in the esports space since 2015. So to be here for these 3 years and to be really like invested in much more than just depth, just really intelligently, like just thinking about this whole thing. It makes me very proud to see these are the numbers that we're posting. It really makes me proud to be at the forefront of this whole thing, and I'm sure that many other people feel the same way, because in esports history, this will probably go down as a major landmark overall for the industry, because it was so big and so hype that personalities from all over the space, because I'm involved in a few different esports, not just CSGO, but Rocket League and PUBG, and I also follow a few League of Legends people, but all those people from all those scenes were tweeting about it. And if you had TweetDeck open, you could see, I have 3 monitors, I take my 4 use, I had TweetDeck up over here, and I was watching basically all the fucking hashtags being put out, and all the people that, that usually I was expected to see tweeting about Rocket League stuff, were tweeting about, major stuff in the CSGO major, and the people I expect to be tweeting about PUBG and various other bits and pieces, they were tweeting about the major as well. It was such a significant situation that there was even a clip being posted on, I think it was Reddit, or I remember seeing it on Twitch, on Twitter, but I think it made it to Reddit, of the LCS casters from League of Legends congratulating Cloud9 for winning the major midway through the broadcast. Like, you can't get much more significant than that. You branched out. Like, CSGO is truly a global game, and it's truly a significant esport. I think it's the forefront of the whole esports space, and I think this whole thing proves it, because it is one of the most significant stepping stones in our industry. I think it's going to stay that way for a very long time, and for those of you people who say, without irony, that CSGO is a dead game, you don't know nothing, mate, and I'm really proud to say that. I really, really am. Makes me really excited about the future of this scene, especially over 2018. It's going to be a hype year, a hype time, and I hope you all are going to be here for the ride for it. So that's my thoughts. That's my storylines, my major storylines to take away from the ELEAGUE Major. Hopefully we have some really exciting stuff coming up soon. I'm going to make another video about the DreamHack Leipzig tournament that also took place alongside this ELEAGUE Major, and how significant that is for the Rocket League space. But for the time being, I'm hyped as hell, and I'm ready to get started on even more. So thank you very much for joining us. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And do subscribe, like, etc. to support the channel. And I'll see you all very soon.